In this video, I'm going to talk about some of my favorite fantasy books, which I think are perfect for people who are just getting into the genre, getting back into the genre. I am going to talk about books that are in duologies and series. And then at the end of the video, I'll recommend some really nice fantasy standalones. Let's get into it. Starting off with the Shepherd King duology, we have One Dark Window and Two Twisted Crowns. This is a perfect duology in my opinion, but I'm only going to be talking about One Dark Window to avoid any spoilers and just to get you into the series. One Dark Window is centered around this kingdom, which has a dark magic that has turned sour. By that, I mean that it is cursing and infecting certain individuals within the kingdom. Elspeth Spindle is a young woman living in this town, and she has a secret. She has this entity called the Nightmare who has taken up residence inside her body. Now, this Nightmare is a strong, mysterious, dark, and kind of creepy guy. And magic comes in the form of a certain and very limited amount of cards. Each card will allow you to wield a certain kind of power when the card is activated. So because there's only a certain amount of cards with limited power, those who have these cards are kind of large and in charge. So that is One Dark Window, a gothic fantasy with just a subplot of romance. I recommended this duology to a friend of mine who didn't read fantasy, didn't read much fiction at all. And once she read this entire duology, this just kick-started her fantasy reading journey. So this is why it is #1 on the list and my first recommended to anybody who would like to get into fantasy. Now let's talk about the Letters of Enchantment duology. This is by Rebecca Ross and it is a YA fantasy. Now let me tell you about Divine Rivals. To me, Divine Rivals is a little less of a fantasy and more of a historical fiction with some magical realism elements. Why I say this is because the world we find ourselves in the Letters of Enchantment duology also has a limited amount of magic. Humans do not wield magic, but there is some leftover residual magic from when the gods used to rule the world. Iris Winnow is our FMC, and she is a young woman who's working really hard to keep her shit together and the collective shit of her family together. She is doing this by taking care of her mother and working really hard as a journalist. Gods are calling the humans to fight in this war. Unfortunately, Iris's brother has been called to war and he's been gone for a while, and she has been writing letters to him trying to find out more about him. But something happens along the way and the letters don't get delivered to her brother. They land up being delivered to someone else. It is equal parts cozy and terrifying, but it is so heartfelt. There's something about Rebecca Ross's writing that is flowery and poetic, but not too much so. For me, it doesn't take me out of the story. She just paints such a vivid picture and a gorgeous world. Another perfect, heartfelt, wholesome duology. Just a disclaimer, I've only read the first 2 books in this trilogy. I've yet to read the third because it just came out, but I'm definitely going to read it. The Immortal Dark is a dark academia fantasy book with a subplot of romance. And our female main character is Keeden. And Keeden is a lost heiress who really doesn't know much about her origins and her family. She eventually returns to her family home. And when she gets there, she realizes how little she knows and also how ruthless this world is and the campus is, and honestly how they might have done her a favor by keeping her away. But she's here and she's determined to find somebody while she's at the university. And because of this, she will not quit. So she quickly has to learn how to be just as ruthless and cunning as everybody else on campus. Each main founding family has vampires bound to their family. And Keeden's vampire, he's equal parts cruel and mysterious, and he is not helping her with her missions. He's kind of a hindrance. It was thrilling, captivating. I couldn't put the book down. Now, The Scholomance is a YA fantasy. It also has dark academia and romance subplots. So we're at the school called the Scholomance, and the Scholomance is basically Hogwarts if all of Hogwarts was the Forbidden Forest. Like, When you enter the university, you do not leave until you graduate. There are no holidays, there's no day passes, you're not going out for the weekend. You're in it until you're done, and it is deadly. People constantly be dying in this book and in this school. Like, chances are, when you drop your kid off at the Scholarmans, you're like, peace out, Squirrel Scout. I don't know if or when I will see you again. And now this doesn't create a great campus atmosphere, if you can imagine. Everyone is ruthless, devious, and not likely to form friendships unless it's an allyship which will serve you and help you survive. Now, our main character, I think her name is Elle, she's been in the school for a while, and she is just suspicious, as you should be. She's like, what kind of school has no teachers but is also so deadly, and why is it like this? This is one of the first fantasy series I picked up when I first started getting back into reading. The moment I finished the first book, A Deadly Education, I picked up the next one, and I just kept going. Now let's talk about The Legendborn Cycle by Tracy Deonn, which will have 4 books, but currently only 3 are out. And this is a YA fantasy with some romance aspects. In the first book, Legendborn, we follow Bree Matthews, who's 16 years old and has just suffered a terrible loss. She is grieving and really can't fathom staying at home in her town anymore. So what she does is she enrolls in a gifted program at a university, and she gets accepted. And while she's there, she quickly discovers that things are amiss. She sees some magical, paranormal things going on, which is not normal to her or the world that she lives in. This is all wild to her. Anyway, as she starts uncovering things about what she has seen, she realizes she might be more involved in the magical side of life than she could have ever dreamed of. So we continue to uncover the mysteries and the magic of this world with Bree, as she also makes some personal realizations about her family and herself and what this all means for her future. It was funny, it was emotional, it was heartbreaking, but it also just felt so genuine. Like, I can imagine this might be exactly how a 16-year-old would go about finding out that there is magic in this world, and possibly her family line. It was just a great story. I cannot wait for the 4th book to come out. And I recommend this to everybody and anybody. Top tier fantasy series. Next up, we're going to be talking about Bride and Mate by Ali Hazelwood. Now, technically, these are interconnected standalones, Bride being the first book and Mate being the second. Now, people do say that you can read Mate first or in any order. I don't think so. I think that if you do want to read both Bride and Mate, you have to read Bride first, because I think it gives you some great background information. So I would recommend treating it as a series or as a standalone and just go ahead and read Bride. Now, I love Bride by Ali Hazelwood. It is my first Ali Hazelwood book that I ever read, and I'm currently rereading it. When I started this video, I was like, damn, I could read this again just to feel something, feel alive once more. We have our main character, who is Misery Lark, and Misery is a vampire, and her dad is very high on the food chain when it comes to vampires and just in this world in general. Now, since she was young, she has always been a pawn in her dad's political games, and even though she's 25, she's still a pawn in her dad's political games. But she wants nothing to do with it. She has been a pawn her whole life, and it's it has definitely affected who she is and where she belongs in this world with vampires, humans, and werewolves. Misery has been human collateral, which means that she grew up in the human territory. Now, she finds herself once again having to join a foreign territory, this time the werewolf territory. And she has to do this by possibly entering into arranged marriage with a werewolf. Do recommend, if you like something more romance heavy, a little more smuttier, definitely recommend Bride. And if you enjoy this, go ahead and read Mate afterwards. Gets me into our last and final segment, standalone time. We follow Matilda, who is a young goddess of the underrealm. We quickly, with Matilda, find out how ruthless and bloodthirsty the gods are, and we go through life with her from a childhood to an adult as a god who is trying to come to terms with herself, the gods, both the underling and the skywards and the mortal realm. When she is young, she finds that she has a connection with a human boy as he dreams of her before they have even ever met. And we just go on a journey of self discovery. Where do we belong? What does she want from life as a god? And it is a beautiful romance, excellent writing. I love how rich all the side characters were, and I just love how detailed the story was. There were so many different elements that I just found it was a gorgeous, wonderful standalone fantasy book. Next in my standalone recommendations, we have One for My Enemy by Olivia Blake. Now, this is a fantasy romance set in current day New York City, and it is a Romeo and Juliet retelling. So we have two very powerful magical wish families, and we have the Antonovs and the Fedorovs. No, the Antonovas. The Antonovas are a family of strong, powerful, beautiful women who have a business in magical skincare products, if I remember correctly. And I just love the store. I love the family, but these women are equal parts beautiful and cunning. They mean business, and they're really good at business too. Then we have the Fedorov boys. Now, the Fedorov boys, they're more crime boss guys, okay? Their dad is a crime boss, and they just do their dad's bidding. And these are two rival families, and things have been tense for the last couple of years. And we join the story right as it culminates into a mess. Now, let me tell you, I couldn't put this book down. Things have never been more tense as we follow this battle of who is going to be the strongest, most powerful witch family. Now, the writing in this, I don't think I've read a book with writing quite like this. It was poetic and abstract, but so gorgeous and easy to follow along. And I just couldn't put this book down. When I started, I was immediately obsessed. It is heartbreaking. It is beautiful and so poetic. I definitely recommend One for My Enemy by Olivia Blake. The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sango Mandana is set in Britain. Now, there are not many witches left in modern day Britain, and that leaves Micah Moon feeling quite alone. She's a witch and she has to keep her magic a secret. So it is really hard for her to form a society or just feel connection to most people when she has to keep such an intricate part of her life a secret. Now, one day an opportunity arises where she can kind of go against these rules and maybe use her magic a little more freely, perchance. But this is really dangerous because we are keeping magic a secret for a reason. Regardless, she is desperate for connection and community, so she embarks on this journey to use her magic a little more, and it is the most beautiful, cozy, found family story I have ever read. If I could just dive straight into the world of this book, I would. It was a gorgeous, cozy, lovely, heartfelt fantasy. And last but not least, we have A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping, also by Sango Mandana, and this is also set in modern day Britain. Now, in this story, we follow Sarah Swan, who is a young magical witch who flew too close to the sun and kind of ruined any chance she has of being a great, powerful witch. Now, we follow along with her as she comes to terms with the new life that she has set to live, which is not at all what or how she thought she would be living at this time in her life. And we go on this journey of self-acceptance and also of sticking it to the man when the man is just damn wrong. There's also a very sassy, hilarious fox and many amazing displays of magic in this book. I just love how magic is used, how it's represented, and I just, again, found family, super cozy, funny, heartbreaking, heartwarming, just super wholesome, and both a Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches and A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping have a little bit of spice. It is just the perfect combination of cozy fantasy, and I recommend both those books. Amazing. So there you have it. Those are my recommendations for fantasy series and fantasy standalones for beginners. If you're just getting into your fantasy journey, I hope my recommendations can get you into fantasy again or just for the first time. And I hope you have the best, most magical fantastical time. Let me know if you end up picking any of these books, and if you have any recommendations for me, because I've been in a little bit of a fantasy slump, which was why I wanted to film this video, so I could feel all the good feelings again. Okay, love you. Bye!